It was the fall of 2018 and I had gone on a vacation to Asia. I had decided to join a tour group, though I had started feeling regrets about it. Whenever I had visited a new country, I liked to see what the people and places are really like, not just what the officials and tour guides want you to see. It was that desire that led me to make the worst decision of my life. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and burning wood, as I lingered at the edge of my group. The city we had left behind was a blur of neon signs and market stalls, but here, beyond the bustling tourist trails, the world felt ancient and untouched. I had spent months dreaming of this trip, poring over travel guides, imagining the raw, unfiltered beauty of the country. Yet, every carefully planned stop, every sanitized cultural site felt hollow, as though I were merely skimming the surface of something far deeper and exotic. I wanted more. Our tour guide had warned us against wandering off. She spoke in a clipped tone, as she emphasized the dangers of traveling alone in the rural countryside. Stay with the group. Always. But the temptation was too great. The moment the opportunity presented itself, I slipped away unnoticed. I made a beeline towards the edge of the town, then headed out into the countryside. My heart pounded with the thrill of rebellion. I made good distance. Within an hour I was several miles out of town. At first, my adventure was intoxicating. The narrow roads twisted through hills blanketed in mist, their edges dissolving into dense forests. Villages dotted the landscape, and clusters of squat, weather-worn houses leaning against each other. The exotic sights thrilled my sense of adventure and pushed me forward miles further. I walked for hours, breathing in the foreign scents of burning charcoal, wet foliage, and something acrid I couldn't quite place. I had a map, and it showed the road that I was on would loop back to the city, a full 10-mile circuit. I planned to keep going straight and rejoin my tour group at the hotel by evening. I noticed the people seemed to change as I ventured further from the city. In the city, the locals were always friendly, smiling, and polite. But as I traveled deeper into the country, the people I encountered were not the warm, welcoming rural folk I had naively expected. They all looked gaunt. Their eyes lingered on me for too long, filled with something unreadable: resentment, suspicion, perhaps even contempt. Some turned away as I passed. Others whispered amongst themselves. A group of children peeked from behind a crumbling wall, their expressions neither curious nor friendly, just empty. The deeper I ventured, the more the air itself seemed to change. Thicker, pressing against me like unseen hands. It was only when the sky turned a dimming orange that I realized how foolish I had been. I had easily gone 10 miles and more, but there was no indication I was heading back to the city. The road no longer resembled what was on my map. Landmarks blurred into one another. The fields, once picturesque in the golden afternoon light, now seemed vast and desolate, stretching endlessly in every direction. Panic set in as I realized I had no idea where I was or how to get back. No signal. No GPS. I was completely and utterly alone. Then night descended on the country road full force. No streetlights, no traffic, just deep country darkness. Then salvation. A gas station appeared in the distance, its feeble neon sign flickering like a dying heartbeat. The place was nearly abandoned, save for an old, grizzled truck driver refueling his rig. His skin was weathered like cracked leather, his eyes sharp beneath bushy brows. He regarded me in silence as I approached, his fingers tapping against the side of his truck. Lost? he asked haltingly. Apparently enough foreigners have gotten lost in the past that he knew that English word. Yes, I exhaled, barely concealing the desperation in my voice. I need to get back to the city. Can you help? He studied me for a long moment, then jerked his chin toward the passenger door. Come. I barely hesitated before climbing in. The driver made a quick call on his cell phone. I was surprised that he had cell service, wishing I had his phone plan. Then he jumped in the driver's seat and set off. As we rumbled down the dirt road, the ride was eerily silent. The truck rattled along the empty country lane, its headlights carving a narrow path through the darkness. The driver barely acknowledged me, sipping from a dented metal flask as he kept his gaze fixed on the road. It was kind of awkward. I contemplated if I should offer him money when he got me back to town, and how much I should offer. I didn't know the customs of the area or what was expected. It was causing me a fair amount of anxiety, as if I didn't already have enough stress in one day. The driver gave me no clues and offered no conversation. The only sound was the rhythmic drone of the tires crunching the dirt, a hypnotic lull that dulled the edges of my anxiety. Then he pulled into a remote rest stop. The place was barely more than a patch of cracked pavement and a single flickering light, its sickly glow casting elongated shadows across the ground. The surrounding forest loomed inky black. The trees packed so tightly together they looked like a solid wall of darkness. "Check trailer," the driver muttered, killing the engine. His voice was gruffer now, almost distracted. I shifted in my seat. He waved a hand. "No. Stay." The door groaned as he stepped out. I watched him in the side mirror as he disappeared behind the trailer, his silhouette swallowed by the night. The air felt suddenly wrong. It was too still, too quiet. The hairs on my arms prickled. Then, a noise. The sharp scrape of metal against metal. Seconds stretched into minutes. The driver didn't return. I leaned my head out the passenger window and looked around, straining my eyes in the darkness for any sign of him. Then the truck roared to life. I turned, expecting to see the driver sitting back in his seat. But it wasn't him. A different man now sat behind the wheel. His face was obscured by the shadow of a cap, but the cruel glint in his eyes was unmistakable. Before I could react, the passenger door opened, and something cold pressed against my ribs. "No move," a voice threatened. I turned my head slowly. A second man sat beside me, so still it was as if he magically appeared. My breath came in shallow gasps as realization sank in. I had made a terrible mistake. The new driver pulled back onto the road. Panic surged through me when, after only going a half-mile more, the truck veered off the main road and onto some ill-defined dirt trail. The headlights carved a thin path through a suffocating darkness, illuminating little more than twisted branches and the skeletal remains of old trees. The world outside became a blur of tangled undergrowth and shifting shadows as we plunged deeper into the unknown. My captors remained silent, their faces expressionless masks of malice. The only sounds were the relentless growl of the engine and my own ragged breathing, each gasp sharp and uneven, betraying the terror constricting my chest. After what felt like an eternity, the truck shuddered to a stop. The sudden absence of motion was jarring, but the quiet that followed was worse. It was thick, unnatural, pressing in on me from all sides. The door was yanked open, and before I could react, rough hands seized me, their grip unyielding. I struggled, but their fingers dug into my arms, dragging me out of the cab and onto unsteady legs. The ground beneath me was damp, the scent of decaying leaves and stagnant water clogging my nostrils. They bound my wrists tightly, the coarse rope biting into my skin, and hauled me toward the back of the truck. My pulse thundered in my ears as the doors swung open with a metallic groan. I almost died of shock upon beholding the sight inside. The trailer was no ordinary cargo hold. It had been transformed into a grotesque operating room. A single bulb flickered from above, casting weak, trembling light over the stainless steel trays lined with surgical instruments. Scalpels, clamps, and saws gleamed under its sickly glow, their edges sharp and waiting. The air was heavy with the unmistakable metallic tang of blood, mixing with the stale scent of antiseptic. An operating table, stained and ominous, stood at the center of it all, its straps open and waiting. I tried to pull away, but they shoved me forward, forcing me onto its cold padded surface. The straps snapped shut around my wrists and ankles, sealing my fate. They suited up. Scrubs, gloves, and I could only watch and flail helplessly as they prepared to harvest my organs. My breath came in such shallow gasps. I thought I would suffocate as one of the men loomed over me, his lips curling into something that might have been a smile if it weren't so devoid of warmth. He picked up a scalpel, turning it slowly between his fingers, letting the light catch the blade. "You see?" he murmured, holding it so close I could see my own terrified reflection in its polished surface. The other man laughed and joined in, reaching for a pair of shears and tapping them together in a rhythmic, almost playful manner. They delighted in my terror, savoring each moment as they showcased their tools. I thrashed about like I was having a seizure, but they just tightened all the straps, then turned on the operating light to begin their grim work. I braced myself for the sting of the first cut, when I heard the low, distant rumble of an approaching vehicle shatter the eerie silence. Tension rippled through the space like a frigid wind that froze my captors. Headlights flickered through the trees, casting long, shifting shadows against the truck's exterior. The men exchanged frantic glances, their confidence cracking. One of them stepped toward the trailer doors, fingers twitching as he reached for the handle. A heavy rapping sounded against the metal. The doors swung open with a creak, and the harsh beam of a flashlight sliced through the darkness, burning my eyes. A uniformed figure stood there, broad-shouldered, his presence filling the space with an authority that sent my captors into a brief but fatal hesitation. Then everything exploded into motion. One of the men lunged, a blade flashing in his grip. A single shot rang out, deafening in the confined space. Blood sprayed across the trailer wall, splattering onto the cold steel. The other man didn't hesitate. He bolted into the night, disappearing into the trees before another shot could follow. The officer stepped forward, his breath heavy, his gun still raised. He scanned the scene quickly, then moved to my side, reaching for a knife. This one meant to save, not to harm. He cut the straps binding me, and the moment I was free, I collapsed, sobbing, my body racked with shudders. Somehow, against all odds, I had survived. The aftermath was a haze of flashing lights and distant voices. The police took my statement, their faces grim as they documented the nightmarish scene. But when more officers arrived and scoured the surrounding forest, there was no sign of the second man. No evidence of who they were, where they had come from, or how many more like them might be out there. The only thing left behind was the body of the one assailant lying on the gutted remains of their horrifying operating setup. And my tour guide? She was there. It was she who notified the authorities where I was. Apparently my phone finally found service and pinged my location. She recognized it as a dangerous spot, and got the police there in a hurry. She saved my life. I was reunited with my tour group, but I was no longer the same man who had strayed from them. The nightmares began immediately. Visions of cold steel against my skin, the glint of surgical instruments under a dim light, the suffocating grip of terror. The knowledge that I had been a breath away from something unthinkable. I tried to forget. I told myself it was over, that I was safe, but the fear never faded. And neither has the lesson. Stay with the group. Always.